If you were at the summit in 2019 in Hawaii, we worked with a Native Hawaiian community to help build a network there. What has happened since the summit in 2019 in Hawaii is incredible. There's a growing and strong community of support around community-driven connectivity solutions. And Lihla Noori is one of the people who is very much, very much behind it. And on a personal note, I can tell you, I have never met anyone in my life who can get people to do things as well as she can. Lihla.
Aloha, kakahiaka kako. Thank you so much, Mark, for that lovely introduction. Thank you for having me here at your Internet Society conference. Certainly feel a little bit out of my wheelhouse. I come from a conservation background with natural resource management, small islands in Micronesia, and also here in Hawaii. So at the start of the pandemic, when this came upon us as a need overall for our community, I had no choice but to jump at the chance to help wherever I could. So just a little bit more about where I work and why I'm entering into this space. I work right now at Kamehameha Schools, which is one of the largest landowners in Hawaii, endowed by Princess Pauahi Bishop. She was a passionate advocate for Native Hawaiian people, and she believed that education was key to the survival of the Native Hawaiian people. And because of her, Kamehameha Schools has existed for over 130 years. And we operate 3 K-12 campuses only for Native Hawaiian students and 30 preschools across Hawaii. Because of that, they wanted to start partnering to work with other organizations to achieve their mission, which is quite grand, to move major Native Hawaiian issues forward. So my role is really to leverage partnerships and philanthropy to important issues like education, environment, even the intersection of health. Never in there did it say, oh, digital equity or connect broadband. But when pandemic came, as you can imagine, it severed the lines that we normally have to buses, getting to school, being in FaceTime, going to health appointments, all of those things, communities that were so rural. As you know, most of Hawaii is a rural state. We couldn't do those things anymore. We couldn't function. So that became one of the major drivers of support that we provided. And when we found out from Bert Lam, who I wonder if he's on this call, Bert let us know about the Pu'uhonua Waimanalo model. And we thought right away, oh, how can we help with this? Because this is affecting our communities across the islands. I think many of you were actually there yesterday in our intro talk. So I wanted to just, get down more in the weeds about the details of what the community broadband network is starting to look like in Hawaii. As Mark shared, we've been able to convene a number of communities now. This is a rudimentary drawing, unlike what Spencer could provide for us, but we put this together literally for today to be able to show you what's been happening. And as we have Waimanalo in the middle here, I hope you can see my cursor, we have Oahu. So this is the island of Oahu right here, and this orange dot represents the current Waimanalo. And Waimanalo has just been Uncle Bumpy, Brandon Makavawa, as you know, are just wonderful champions for this work. And then how fitting that 4 months later, the pandemic would come and we had no idea how important that work really would be until now. And so at that lifting and at that community broadband network install, we had folks from this dot right here, which is Waianae, that is a stronghold for Native Hawaiian people, and in particular, 200 homeless people who live at a boat harbor for the last few years. They together amassed their funding to buy a piece of land inside a valley and be able to purchase the land and plan a build for them to literally move over there and build their own houses so they would no longer have to live on state property. And this is primarily Native Hawaiian people. So James Pakele actually went over to Waimanalo and helped with the build. And so come 2020 early, he's ready. And he's ready saying, we need more help. We don't know how to get HTEL to build 13,000 feet of fiber for us. We don't have any connection in that valley. It's so remote. And so here we are, we could provide a service, listening to the community. What do they need? They have to figure out how to put 13,000 fiber line down from the main road up into the valley. So I think the previous presentation was talking about strategic partnerships, and that was just one critical area where we were able to thrive is right away, thanks to Bert Lum's connections and Mark As well, everyone getting on the phone with HTEL and explaining this community broadband network. What is it? Why do we need it? Luckily, HTEL had some experience putting in the circuits for Waimanalo. So we already had warmed up all of those wheels that we needed to start exponentially growing what this network looks like. And so lo and behold, this year we found some grant money from other places. Everyone had ear to the ground for digital equity in Hawaii and came together. And we found, after a while, we found money was not the problem. We found out this was a human issue, right? We talked about that yesterday, is how do we have people get on the same page about the needs and with the urgency that we had, which was just tremendous, right? So that fiber got laid within 6 months. And that is unbelievable if you think about all the different federal dollar pots that Hawaiian Tel was dealing with. They laid it very quickly. And then after that was more about how do we get the equipment there? Spencer, what do we need? What does the network map look like? And getting on the calls with Internet Society the beginning of this year fairly often. Dustin entering, Anna helping, how do we get on the trainings? Literally piece by piece, putting this together, just one step at a time. And all of us learning along the way. So folks started hearing about this because Bert Lam convenes the Broadband Hui every Wednesday. And every Wednesday, we're able to provide that spot to provide updates and to find out who's doing what. I'll put the link in the chat, actually. He requested me to share what that looks like. And what this is about 60 to 80 people. Some folks are here. I believe Eugene is here, and potentially some other folks too from Hawaii are on the line. And basically, we just talk about what's happening in broadband, everything from cable landing all the way to community networks and everything in between policy, between emergency broadband benefit, the policies we need to lift at the state, how are we going to have a broadband office? Our state just didn't have all of these ducks in a row prior to pandemic. We didn't have the urgency, right? So the state level conversations are happening at the same time as the community, and that helped propel the resources we needed and the know-how to figure out how to grow that. In the meantime, other communities started hearing about it and wanted to actually find out, okay, I need one too. What does this look like? Maybe this can help me. And that's where you see all these other dots. What you see in Maui, this other dot right here, this is Maui, the east side of Maui. Hana is another word for it. You might have heard of the road to Hana. This little community of Kipahulu is one of these communities that is one of the last at the end of the road. They literally lost their road for 2 years, had to have emergency supplies outfitted to their place for water and food. To think about the fact there's no power there and no running water gives you a sense for how rural these places really are. Only Honolulu is urban. Every other place in Hawaii is actually rural. So they lack so much of the supplies that some of us take for granted. And so here we are. Oh, how do we put a community broadband network in a place with no power? And so thankfully, we're able to innovate with Internet Society, Spencer and Hossein, to figure out what solar might look like, what generators might look like. What does that even look like at an end of the road kind of place where for them, this is about adapting to climate change. This is about resilience. This is not so much your daily people live right near this spot, but they actually come here and fish. They come here and grow taro and plant taro, and they pound the taro to make poi. So it's really significant culturally, this spot right here, which is really moving forward pretty quickly. As we speak, the equipment's landing and they're figuring out how to lift this community broadband network. Likewise, back to Hawaiian Tel, there was no actual cable running the entire length of this island. I think you see my cursor. This whole length of island had no cable, no fiber. And HTEL had been awarded federal dollars to be able to lay that fiber. So lucky, it's happening right now in November, that the fiber will be laid at the same time our community broadband network will be put up. So these other dots you see are all Wi-Fi on wheels, because we realized Cradle Point could provide an emergency service to some folks who couldn't even access school resources since the pandemic, and they were all shut down. Every school was online, and families and homes did not have internet access because of affordability issues or because it just wasn't around. So all these other dots are 7 Wi-Fi on wheels that have popped up. And together we've been negotiating what that looks like with the help of Awamo Collaborative, Brad Bennett. He's been convening both the Wi-Fi on wheels community champions and even the community broadband network folks who are growing more and more. There's an orange spot missing, probably one coming up in Molokai pretty soon, right over here. And then down at the south end, this is one gray, which is actually in the works with Miloli'i. That community is the last fishing village and last native Hawaiian fishing village in Hawaii. And so you'll see a nice spread across the islands. And again, the distance is tremendous. We can't really see each other. Travel restrictions were so great. This is all happening on Zoom. So thanks to all this orchestration of partnerships, technical knowledge, and then the community desire and know-how that was so evident, we've been able to grow up to 3, soon 5 community broadband networks. And since our, I think I mentioned this yesterday, since our focus has been on how to lift it physically with equipment and resources and all the technology, I think now it's so obvious that the shift needs to be more with human capacity. What does that training look like? How are communities going to take this on and adopt it into the future? And what does digital sovereignty really mean in Hawaii, especially when we see this pandemic is not going away? We just came out of a huge surge of over 1,000 cases a day. We're only now down after the last month of additional closures and folks not being able to go, have the freedoms they are used to having. So we don't know if that's coming back. But in an island as remote as ours, one of the most remote island chains in the world, we can't afford not to have internet. This is a vital, lifeline to everything else happening in the world, including in our own communities. Neighborhood boards, community associations, everyone is meeting on Zoom. Even if you live 3 blocks away, they're still meeting on Zoom. Nobody is congregating right now in groups at all. So I can't underscore how important this work has been, and a couple logos here really demonstrate that. That Owamo Collaborative Group and Hawaii Kids Can. Hawaii Kids Can is the group convening the Wi-Fi and Wheels, intersecting with Brad Bennett, who's over here in Hawaii Island. So we are actually spread across. Sometimes on the call, we'll have people representing every island. So I think that's a unique challenge probably to some other Indigenous communities. I'm not sure that you have this island aspect where people are really spread apart by oceans. So I think I covered a lot of the how and the what. I wondered too, if I could just take a moment to thank folks like Lynn Hunter at Philanthropy Northwest. She's the one who told me there was a deadline for 2.4 gigahertz. And I thought, what do you mean there's a deadline for 2.4 gigahertz for Native tribes? And she explained it to me, and I called up Department of Homelands and asked, are we going to meet the deadline? They said, I don't know. And I called another person, another Native Hawaiian serving organization. That's how I got into this, to figure out that this gigahertz deadline was driving so many other things. And just one thing after another, my partner being owning a tower business for 10 or 15 years didn't hurt, because I knew a little bit about that side of it and about the carrier side and the AT&T and the cell phone networks, but I really had no idea about what was going on. So I wanted to thank her, and then also Muriel Triggs, because when Lynn Hunter told me about this deadline, she said, you should call Muriel Triggs. She'll explain it to you and tell you what's happening in Hawaii. Literally, I called the phone. She didn't answer. I was on the website. She said, book me here, 15, 20-minute slots. I did. And she called me back the next morning. That doesn't happen in Hawaii. We're not able to get together like so instantly. So the fact Muriel was available just like that to somebody she never knew before was just incredible. And I think all of that connectivity and all of the way you approach your work has really made this possible. So thank you so much for being there for us to figure this out and allowing us to go step by step and learning with you. I don't know how much time we have left, Mark, but if anyone had questions, it would be a good time.
I think we could do a couple quick questions. I see Sally has a question. Have any other countries come into your group for advice, such as PNG, Papua New Guinea?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, I have not known if anyone else called us from any of the Pacific Island nations, but I would venture to guess that might happen as we clarify our own communications and get a little better about sharing. My work has been in Micronesia, so there are US affiliated flag islands of Marshall Islands, Federated States of Micronesia, and Marianas Islands. And I would envision they might call us first, because PNG is a little far removed from where we are, just even politically. However, yeah, we'll welcome it for sure.
Excellent. And Spencer made a comment that the first wireless networks in the world were invented in Hawaii back in the 60s. So it's a great tradition.
How is that? Tell us, Spencer.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Spencer.
AlohaNet. Yeah, that's the name of it. The first wireless networks in the world. They were trying to, University of Hawaii Manoa was trying to get into computer networking and stuff, but there's islands. You can't just lay cable. So they invented all that research.
That's amazing. I'm not surprised. There's a few things we've always, that we've invented. So it's incredible.
It's like Bumpy told me once, the internet needs more aloha.
That's right. Absolutely. It does. And it shouldn't, like we notice sometimes in Hawaii, I don't know if the other ladies on the line know this, but sometimes I'm in a call with 10 other guys. There's no women on the call. I mean, we need to diversify that, right? And I'm glad to see on this call is different, but in Hawaii, that hasn't changed yet. So we're going to work on it.
We can do one more quick question, and Jessica has her hand up.
Yeah, I was curious about the Wi-Fi on wheels because, I have a lot of culturally sensitive sites that I need to avoid, diminishing the view shed of. And so is that like truly something that's movable, for ceremonial purposes? Because that's been a huge challenge in some of the areas on the reservation to get service, is that, you don't want to impact the culturally sensitive sites from being taken out of that moment and during ceremony.
Yeah, great question, Jessica. They invented this, Cradle Point told me when we were talking to them that they invented this very small device. It's literally this big, and it goes in a car. It's been lifted into buses on our island, and they move it constantly in a bus. The only thing is you need cell phone service, at least 3 bars, and that will amplify the service to be stronger, enough for 100 or so people to get online on video. We've also put it on walls inside of community rec centers. We thought that might be easier because you do have to move the bus depending on where you're parking it for the day. And it's just not even noticeable. You literally could put it in your backpack. So I would say, yes, it's certainly discreet and would be sensitive to other cultural artifacts or ceremonies that are happening. You can't even see it really. I was impressed. What I'm not impressed is how long it takes to get to the equipment and how long it takes to launch it. The equipment side of it has been such a burden, but once it's launched, it's so easy. It's a breeze, and you can go online and manage the whole thing on your own. But I'm not impressed how long it's been taking us to get the equipment. That's mostly because they require us to work through a public agency to purchase it. And that is a hard thing to do with our government. So pushing paper through government for a device that only costs $4,000, why is it taking like 6, 7, 8 months to acquire the device and move the paperwork and get it installed? I feel like it needs to be faster. And they've also said they use it for voting and things like that. So they do move it from ballot box area to ballot box area. So I'm pretty sure, Jessica, the movability of that is locked down. Just more about the bureaucracy of how to get one of those systems. Yeah. Wi-Fi on wheels through Cradle Point. Thank you, Eugene. Yeah, it's a cell phone booster, some kind of cell phone booster, right? Because they'll go there and test it with their cell phone, see if there's enough bars. If there is in your area, you're able to say, yes, we're eligible to do a Cradle Point. But if there was only 2 bars, not enough. So only AT&T and Verizon offers that to us. And sometimes we have both cards inside of the Cradle Point so that if it's, volatile, we can go back and forth to one or the other. Both AT&T and Verizon have been wonderful partners, AT&T more so at some points, depending on where you're at in the process. And they haven't been, competitive at all to realize that they're actually going to lose, obviously, business if we're able to get community free spots around town in those rural areas I mentioned is where we lifted them. But we did notice the manpower is just so much heavy manpower on the coordination to get those like 4 organizations of give money to one person, it goes down to another before it finally gets to the community, has been this little leapfrog of bureaucracy that doesn't make sense. So we have to be able to skip right to the community somehow. And I think that would make it an ideal solution. Excellent. Yes, I can absolutely share the AT&T contact. I'll share that with Mark and he can get it out to Leonardo. Perfect. Leonardo, thank you.
Thank you, Lihla. We're running a little behind, so we need to jump to the next presentation. But Lihla, as always, fascinating, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. Aloha.